Shout on, pray on, we're gaining ground. Glory, hallelujah, the dead's alive and the lost is found. Glory, hallelujah.
PatriarchCigars.com.
SquirrelyJoes.com.
Welcome to the Based Boomer Podcast on Eschatology Matters, part of the Fight, Laugh, Feast Network. Today, I get to interview Josiah Stowe of Dominion Wealth Strategies. Josiah and his company are financial planners, but we're not going to talk so much about financial planning today. Rather, Josiah wants to share how his aggressive postmillennialism affects how they do financial planning. We are the Eschatology Matters channel, after all. One of the things postmillennialism does when you embrace it is to expand your vision of redemptive history, of what God's doing in your life and in the world. That includes starting to think of things generationally, including money. I became a Christian in the late 70s, in the late great planet Earth era, when dispensational premillennialism was everywhere. Needless to say, since Jesus was coming back any day, having a generational perspective wasn't real high on the priority list. No doubt this tended to cause we boomers to think differently about the future and our legacies. Different generations tend to view life differently. My father, for example, was born in 1931 and grew up during the Great Depression. Not knowing where the next dollar is coming from will make a person frugal with the dollars they do have. So let's talk to Josiah and get his perspective on this generational stuff and post-millennialism. There he is. Welcome, sir.
Yeah, it's good to be here.
Yeah. Would you be considered Gen X, a Z? Or are you like a little...
Last I checked, I am the last year for millennials.
Millennial, okay.
Technically, but I have far more
technically
with the next
set in
generation.
stone, and that's it, right?
Right, yeah, 96-ish last I checked was like the last year to be a millennial, but it's kind of just sandwiched in between millennials and whatever the name of the next generation is.
Yeah, I think it's Z, because I have two millennials. I have my daughter's 33, my son's 29, so just a year older than you. And then we have a 22-year-old who is, I guess, the Z.
Right. Yeah. So I was raised on VCR tapes, and I had a Nokia 3310 for my first phone.
The VCR goes back that far. Wow.
Yeah, it does. Right. But we were also poor, so we were living like 10 years ago.
Living in a previous generation's world, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Blockbuster. You remember Blockbuster?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I was the guy. My family would send me out there on a Saturday evening, go get a movie, and if it was a bad movie, they'd crucify me.
Blockbuster was a special treat. That's how poor we were. So it was like maybe once a month we got to go to Blockbuster.
Well, that's great. And so you're obviously money motivated, which is great. And so what I'd like you to do is give a little background, who you are, where you're from, faith journey, how you got to this post-millennialism thing and the financial planning, thing as well. And then we'll maybe get into some details of how that affects how you do and how it affects our perspective on, generational wealth and so on.
Sounds like a plan. Oh, now speaking of financial planning, I need to make one minor correction. If you say that we are a financial, or if you
is that against the rules?
Financial planner is a protected term that implies that I'm a CFP, a certified financial planner, and they don't like it when people imply that they have.
Didn't mean it.
Right. But it's an independent organization. It's not federal or anything. So they'll just get mad at me.
So what would you call yourselves?
For those at home, a financial consultant, where we try to be a little bit more holistic than just here's how you deal with this particular area of your finances. We want to take all of Christ for all of life, all of finance for Christendom. Beautiful. So kind of a broader approach rather than just here's what you should do with your investment accounts. We also do budgeting, debt management, savings accounts, retirement planning, estate planning, kind of the whole 9 yards.
Wow. Okay.
But just that one minor correction.
No, that's okay.
As far as my testimony is concerned, I was born and raised in Northern California. Born at home. I have 3 sisters, no brothers. And we were raised relatively well. I would
Where
say,
in Northern California?
I was born in Lincoln, so it's now a suburb of Sacramento, but at the time it was a tiny little podunk town in the middle of nowhere. Kind of been absorbed by the greater Roseville, Granite Bay area. Right, but born there and then raised kind of all over the place. I think we moved 13 times before I was 12. My
Wow.
parents split when I was very young, so I had like kindergarten in Paradise, California, first and second grade in Chico, California, third grade in Granite Bay, like all over the place. And my dad was a businessman. I think he started something like three or four different companies, nearly a year, it
Wow.
seemed. Honest Dave's Repair and a few other companies down there. Worked with Pittsburgh Paints for a while. And so we would have periods of time where we were really wealthy, and then boom and bust. It just ended up not working out, or he'd go start another business and kind of squirrel off in another direction. He was actually he used to detail the private jet for the Sultan of Brunei for a few years,
Wow.
like odd jobs. He would be flown all the way across the world to Brunei to go detail this guy's one of the richest men in the world's private jets.
Wow.
And he was a painter and a contractor and did a whole lot of really good, interesting things. So kind of raised in that environment where money came and went. And when it was time to eat rice and beans, we ate rice and beans. And when it was time to go on that vacation to Disneyland, we were able to do that.
Mm.
Just because, feast and famine. And then living with my mom part-time, living with my dad part-time. But the church was pretty constant. My mom was raised Seventh-day Adventist, so she knew Christian, but not that. That was kind of
Mhm.
her whole position. So we bounced around churches a lot, but it was always just some general evangelical church with her. We actually went to Bayside, Granite Bay, where Lincoln Brewster was the worship leader with my dad.
Okay.
Again, general evangelical. He was raised very independent fundamental Baptist. Everything was memorized in the KJV, and so he
Hmm.
knew not that. Um, well, independent fundamental Baptist, except for the Calvinism part. His grandpa was or my grandpa, very Calvinist. So he rebelled and was very Arminian. And now I rebelled and I'm very Calvinist. Weird how that works. Skips a generation. But yeah, raised in Northern California. My father passed away when I was 12. My stepmother took over raising me because my mother had a AVM, kind of a stroke event that left her unable to care for me. And so I lived with my grandparents and my stepmother from 12 on their 18-acre ranch in the Great Republic of Rough and Ready, California, if you want to look
Mm.
that up. It's a village of 550 people. Stayed there
Redwood,
until
Redwood area?
no, more
No.
more foothills of the Sierra Nevadas. So
Okay.
high desert, manzanita trees, well, manzanita bushes, and big oak savannas everywhere. Gorgeous,
Mm.
except when it catches on fire.
Yeah,
So that's kind of what we were known for. A lot of wildfires up there.
exactly.
But ended up joining the Army at 19. I was a religious affairs specialist, a 56 Mike. Um, Went to Fort Sill, Oklahoma for basic training, Fort Jackson, South Carolina for AIT, and then got stationed at Fort Campbell, Kentucky for about 5 years. I was gone 60% of the time doing other things at other bases and other places around the world. But that was kind of home base for me, more or less.
Hmm.
Infantry unit for 3 years, taking care of the dumbest smart people I've ever met in my life. And then I was the funds technician for Fort Campbell for the last 2 years of my career, where basically I had the highest math scores of any chaplain's assistant. So like, oh, we need a new money guy. Pulled him. Also got fired from I didn't get along with my last chaplain, but that's all right. So they pulled me up to the funds office and I started working with money. Not a ton at first. I think their whole budget for the year was like $180,000 without grants, just what was pulled from the services on post. And then I got out. I also met my wife while I was in the military. Had our
Good for
first son
you.
leave for free. It was nice. Military healthcare. And then I got out and got a job at the Southern Baptist Theological Seminary, the largest seminary in the world by terms of area.
Oh,
It's got the largest campus. It's got the largest student body as well. And as I came to work in the funds
does that
office there,
include Boyce College?
it does.
Okay.
So the Southern Baptist Theological Seminary, Boys College, all on one campus. And yeah, they have the largest budget as well because I was working as the executive administrative assistant to the vice president of operations and finance. Probably my longest title ever.
Hmm.
And I was actually, this is at the height of COVID. So they just fired their entire staff or laid them off and hired me to replace all 7 people that were
Wow.
normally on the team for $12.50 an hour, which is not very fun. So I lasted 8 months handling or helping to handle the school's $31 million annual operating budget. And
Wow.
that was barely putting food on the table, mind you. That's $1,000 before taxes. So the GI Bill was helping, and then they changed things and it stopped helping. So ended up taking a break from seminary and transitioning into personal finance because I needed to put food on the table. And I was tired of handling large budgets that basically made no functional difference whether I saved 10 or $15,000 a month. And now I could save a seminary student, $100 a month, and it meant something. So transitioned into personal finance, bounced around a few different companies, and then eventually landed in. Well, I got tired of making compromises in the financial sphere, building plans their way, selling the products they wanted me to sell. So eventually, we just started our own company.
Hmm.
But that's the financial planning side. The post mill side.
Yeah, I'm interested to hear that part.
Yeah, because that's the more important part for this channel. So raised premillennial dispensationalist. My grandparents very heavily premillennial dispensationalist. Zion's fire was nearly a extra biblical source of revelation,
Wow.
in a sense. And reading the Jerusalem Times and just it was really hardcore. We were like prepping for the end times. That's why we had a ranch because we need to sustain ourselves food wise. When the Antichrist is revealed. So that was my whole childhood, essentially. Just okay, we're waiting for the rapture, and I think I'm going to be the generation that has to experience it. So let's go ahead and get everything sorted, get everything
Yeah,
proper.
I thought I was.
Right? Yeah, everyone did. Like Great Planet Earth, right? It was supposed to come in 1988. I was born in 1996, so a
You made
delay.
it.
Right, I did. I did make it. So that was how I was raised, essentially. Just a lot of fear, almost, and anticipation, and the total certainty that this world will burn in a fervent heat. So there's nothing I really need to build here except the spiritual, almost a kind of Gnosticism or a a two-story Christianity where all the important things are upstairs and all the things down here don't really matter. Why rearrange deck chairs on a sinking ship or polish
Yeah, I've
brass?
heard that one
Right. Yeah.
too
So
many times.
that was me. I was like, I don't care. Like, okay, if we wreck the land, if we pollute everything, who cares? It's all going to burn. So there wasn't really any stewardship except, okay, I need to protect my little family and I need to save as many souls as possible. So very short term on the finances because we just
Yeah, if the
deploy the
ship's sinking,
money
you
we
got to
have.
get them out.
Right? Yep. So we're going to spend all our money on tracks. I'm going to buy tons of books to give out, and we're not really going to plan long term because we don't have a long term. Right. But then I joined the army and got out of the MacArthurite bubble that is Northern California. Bethel Redding also had a pretty big influence. So it's like charismatic and or charismatic-esque. And we're waiting for a word from God about when the end times is going to start.
Hmm.
Exactly. And like, oh, I'm having dreams, probably because my anxiety levels were so high all the time. And like, oh, this is a sign. Young men will dream dreams. Here we are. And just nonsense, right? In hindsight. But joined the army, got out of the MacArthurite bubble, and then my grandma actually recommended R.C. Sproul as a resource for apologetics.
Oh, wow.
So I was like, thanks, Grandma. And then kind of
Indeed.
started on the rabbit trail. What is Reformed theology? All right. After I got
You
through the
read
five,
that?
right? Or I watched the entire series. So
Okay.
I got more into his YouTube videos than I did into his books.
Well, yeah, your generation.
Right. So watch
Because
the
the
entire
book was
series. What is
very
Reformed
clear,
theology?
and I gave
Right.
that to my son for Christmas, my youngest son for Christmas,
Yeah.
in fact.
Well, yeah. What is
Wow.
Reformed theology? And everyone's a theologian, and a whole bunch of other R.C. Sproul books on my shelf now.
Wow.
But it was basically through R.C. Sproul and just trying to figure out this whole Reformed theology thing because that was totally foreign. I'd never heard of it before. I'd actually wanted to write a sort of a primer to Schaeffer systematic theology because that I think was still a little bit too deep, a little bit too systematic for most. So I wanted to write a little primer
Now,
called
identify
Dogmatic.
which Schaefer you're talking about.
Not Francis Schaeffer, the
Yeah,
other
I
Schaeffer.
knew that.
Yeah, yeah.
What's his first?
Um, oh gosh, Schaeffer systematic theology. It's also spelled differently.
I was curious. I heard you mention that on a previous interview, and I was wondering,
Yeah.
certainly.
Here, if I can find it. There we go. Louis Sperry Schaeffer.
Oh,
So Louis Schaeffer,
that one. Okay,
Matt
got
Schaeffer. So his systematic theology comment, or I have the whole thing and
it.
through it on a fair number of occasions, but I wanted to write something akin to a dogmatic dispensational theology,
Hmm.
which was like I want something that I can just line by line. Here is the foundational truths that we know, and here's what we can build on that, and from the dispensational point of view, which Schaeffer did, mind you, except he did it in like 13 volumes. I wanted to something a little bit more meaningful or a little bit more digestible. So I was kind of in the process of writing that when I stumbled upon Reformed theology and Reformed dogmatics.
No kidding.
Oh, how about that? Right. So through the ministries of Apologia, James White and Jeff Durbin, and then eventually the Moscow crowd with Doug Wilson and the Fight Left Feast Network in general, I'll say, oh, okay, not only is there a better way, but it allows me to live the Christian life more according to what I thought Christian principles were.
Hmm.
This is a theology that lines up not just theologically, but also practically. this is how Christ appears to want us to build. So instead of having or having my actions almost necessarily out of sync with my beliefs, now they could be in sync. Okay, we're here to build, we're here to prosper, we are here to take the materials that God has given us and co-create in that with him and make this world a garden.
After I became post-mill, I had no idea that the Dominion mandate, the cultural mandate, would still applied. I mean, it just didn't occur to me.
That's not for us, right? Because we're the last
Adam and Eve, they blew it. Psh.
Yeah. Right.
It really didn't. It's just fascinating.
Right. And we're in this last dispensation. So why would we ever go back to Genesis and pretend like any of that actually applies to us?
Yeah. And even as an all-mill, which I embraced in 2014, still didn't, because in fact, I discovered that amillennialism made me I was pan-mill though, for most of my life after my early Christian life. It's all going to pan out in the end. And found this all-mill, and it was, wow, maybe the Bible does say something about eschatology. And then as I embraced amillennialism, I found it like imperceptibly, I just became more negative. Really weird. And then I found post-mill that kind of affirmed an optimism that I was developing. And Doug Wilson, in fact, after a couple of weeks after I'd embraced it, he said on some talk or something, he said, now you have the theological justification for your optimism. And that was like, that's it.
Yeah,
that's what I was looking for,
For me, the kicker was actually, I forget exactly who said it now, but it sticks in my head. It's somebody who was talking about Christus Victor, the general theology that Christ wins. And then if you believe that Christ is the head of the church and the head has victory, but the body loses, you've effectively decapitated the church.
That's a good way to put it.
And so it's like, yeah, we actually
what is the body here for?
Victory. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Did he come just to save a particular people and then let the entire thing burn, or did he come to redeem his creation in its entirety?
Well, when you see the big picture, of redemptive history, and that Satan kind of took the world over, it's his, Christ came back, earned the title of kingdom to take back, and as the joy to the world, the Christmas hymn, to, as far as the curse is found, push that back. And it's such a beautiful, hopeful, encouraging, exciting vision.
Right.
Versus.
And it allows us to work slowly, which is how you build a better foundation. Not.
That's a great way to put it.
Right. So it allows us to do
because we lived in Chicago for a while, 17 years actually, and you would watch them build a building. Right. And we go by it month after month after month after month.
Here's the building, right? Yeah.
But then all of a sudden it goes
straight up. Yeah. So if I were to tell you, time scale affects how you build massively. So if I were to tell you, hey, we've got 3.5 years to build the tallest tower possible, you're going to spend maybe a year building the foundation, maybe gathering your materials, right? And then you build the tower, right? But if I tell you, hey, we've got maybe another 5,000 years to build the tallest possible tower we can, to actually cover the entirety of the earth in a garden. Okay, well, I'm going to start with my backyard.
Yeah, I love it saying, I heard we are building cathedrals we're not going to worship in.
Right.
Which was somewhat common in the Middle Ages,
Yeah. And now we can't even plant trees that we're not going to sit under the shade of. And one of those.
Or buy really big ones for a lot of money.
Yeah. Right. All these cathedrals took centuries to build. In fact, one of my favorites, just because I watched a documentary on it, the Florence Cathedral with the dome. They didn't know how to build it when they started the foundation. They said, we'll figure it out as we go.
Kidding.
We'll invent the technology.
The Florence Cathedral. I gotta watch that one.
So it's a gorgeous dome, but they literally did not have the processes to build it when they designed it. And it's really fascinating how they ended up building it. Basically, there's a word for it, but basically they had to do the brickwork in a herringbone pattern and as miniature arches that arched down in order to build it so that it could support itself on the way up. There was no scaffolding that could do it. The contest that was involved in its initial creation is just a fascinating story. But again, that would have taken hundreds and hundreds of years. But the dome itself was the life's work of a single man.
I heard a story too about like a gargoyle that's facing up to heaven, and nobody knew till flight, or helicopters, whatever, that there was actually anything above this thing.
Huh.
And it's this intricate work. And
Yeah.
whoever was doing that didn't worry about it. It was like, we're doing this unto God,
Right.
and it'll be seen, whatever, right? It's
Yeah.
just
Yeah. All for
beautiful.
the glory of God. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know we despise the beliefs of the men who built those things while yearning for those things to be built.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's all. We could go down that rabbit hole. That's a good point.
right. Because now we have churches made out of like paper mache and cardboard, and we're wondering
We
like,
go to a church that's just white, lower ceiling,
mm,
great folks, pastor's good. It's a PCA church, but man, do I just long to have something where I could, oh,
right.
you go in, it's like, oh,
Right. At least my church has stained glass windows and like a vaulted ceiling,
that's nice.
grand arches, and it's made from local sandstone. So it is
Right.
a really gorgeous building,
Beautiful.
despite the
So,
fact we're
so,
Baptists.
okay, so you embrace postmillennialism.
Mhm.
Now you're a financial consultant.
Yep, that's the
Got it.
one.
And so how does that affect, you're just, you take it. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah, it massively affects because again, if you're building a tower in 5 minutes and you're trying to build the tallest tower you can, you build it a certain way. Just
well, let me
grab
ask you before you go there in terms of specifics,
it. Yeah.
because I talked about this generational thing. I'm a boomer.
Mhm.
We're at fault for every terrible thing in the world. I'm just
Fair.
mea culpa. Matt, what is the Max mea
Yeah,
culpa? That's me.
uh-huh.
And there is something about a kind of looking at something, and it's not just the dispensationalism,
Hmm.
but you've seen a lot of this online where stars or people are saying, I'm not giving anything to my children.
Yep.
So as you do that, I would love for you to kind of maybe explore some of that generationally as well.
Yeah, yeah, that is a big part of it. So the analogy I typically use when someone asks me like what makes post-millennial financial planning any different from if I go down to the Edward Jones down the street,
Right.
and it's really just vision and timeline. That's and I suppose moral considerations. Those are the three big components. But if you're trying to build the largest fortune possible in, let's say, 5 years, like you're 60 years old, you want to be retired by 65, and you don't have enough, so you're going to play it super risky. Hey, I want as much money as possible in the next 5 years, so that in exactly 5 years, there's no risk that I have less, and I have as much as possible. You're going to be building out their portfolio in a very particular way. All right, you're going to have them saving super aggressively. Let's go through your budget and pinch every single penny. And we are trying to build as aggressively as possible. So, no more dining out, no more vacations. Let's pay off those credit cards now because that 24% interest is taking you in the wrong direction faster than your portfolio is going to build it.
Mhm.
Right? So let's try to build this as fast as possible. And you're going to be investing in things that are a little bit more obnoxiously aggressive with a lot of downside protection risk things that you're going to have to take into account. Right? But if I say, hey, Mr. 20-year-old sir, you want to maximize your net worth by death, and let's assume that's at 100 years old. We have 80 years to build. Here's how we're going to do it. And we want to maximize your net worth at death, and we want to make sure that it's in non-taxable asset classes by the point that you die, or you have like a bunch of life insurance assets so that it passes on as tax-free as humanly possible. All right, so it's a huge change in dynamic, in timeline, and really in values. That's probably what affects it most deeply. Now, we don't work with post millennials exclusively. We do
That would
advertise.
limit your
Right?
market.
There's not a huge pool there. But if someone comes to me,
Yet.
right, yeah, because there will be.
Oh, yeah.
But like we advertise on Cross Politic and Right Response and a few other places. And
Yeah.
we're hitting.
No, there's a
response.
general great awakening, I believe, but
Yeah.
but there is one in postmillennialism because
Mhm.
100 years ago it was dead.
Yeah, essentially. Well, actually, it was very much alive. It's just the wrong kind of postmillennialism.
Yeah, amen. That's what I thought postmillennialism was.
Right. The
Wrong, and that's why I would
ideology.
never
Yeah.
believe it or even check it out.
No.
I
no,
know it was
there's a bunch of liberals in the 1920s that were very post-mill.
Woodrow
and
Woodrow
in the World
Wilson
War
was
II.
very post-mill.
Yeah, yeah. Just the post Great War booms that led everyone to be like, oh yeah, society is doing better, therefore post-mill. And liberalism became almost identical to post-mill. In fact, I think the death of JFK was the final nail in the coffin for that liberal post-millism. But I digress, because he
Yeah.
represents a whole lot of that post-mill liberal
Yeah.
post.
go to the moon, blah blah blah. Yeah,
Right. So I
conquer
think
everything.
him passing away and everything, well, especially the way he did, kind of put that nail in the coffin. And then post mill died for a while, but now it's coming back the way it used to be, the proper way, the theological way,
Oh, amen.
like the Jonathan Edwards kind of way. See how it goes. Well, it's going to improve. So we try to work with general mills, post mills. I have had a couple of dispensationalist clients, but it's always tough with them.
Hmm.
So our visions clash. I'm saying, hey, let's try to maximize your net worth so that you end up with as much money as possible at your death. And he's like, I don't know if I'm going to make it there. I mean, half the time it's like, well, we're in the end times. We're literally like, there's a red heifer in Israel right now. There was a blood moon
This person's telling you this?
occasionally. It's we have somewhere in the neighborhood of like 15 dispensationalist clients, and they're almost all very they dig their heels in whenever I try to get them to think longer ahead than 7 or 8 years. They're always very risk averse.
That makes sense, but it's still hard to believe.
Right, right. And they generally really they're super skeptical of the powers and systems that be. So they don't really want to put their money in the market because the market's evil and you need to have like the mark of the beast, I guess, in order to buy and sell in that domain. And it's all going to come crashing down on you. So I don't want to put too much of my capital out there in the places where it has the most opportunity to grow because I need as much money in my own pocket that I have directly accessible for when things hit the fan. So it's just difficult to work with them, difficult to get them to kind of relax and open up their pockets and let their money do what God has called us to do, which is to multiply it. So that has been difficult, but mill, post mill, or even if we can just avoid eschatology as a conversation in general and just take their goals. Hey, what do you want to do? Okay, here's how you do it. And here are the moral considerations that you might want to keep into account when you're trying to deploy this or this or do this or this, and make sure that we're all in alignment, at least on those topics.
Do any of these folks give you any pushback on the moral component? Because, you know, well, since, gosh, for a very long time in Christian Western history, the idea of wealth and money and riches have been problematic, right?
Right. The
monks
Gnostic
and
asceticism.
nuns. Exactly.
Yeah. We've got a whole series of articles on Gnostic asceticism, practically. But yeah, there's this idea, which I think we can trace back to Schofield and Moody and Darby, that since this world is not my home and I'm a wayfaring stranger and a pilgrim, then we are not to build here, essentially. So this world bad and spiritual world good. Therefore, I shouldn't build a fortune here, right? Because my treasures are in heaven. So I shouldn't build, I shouldn't grow.
And the idea of, you know, you're more spiritual if you give more away versus invest it.
Right, because
As an example, right?
the parable with the widow's mite is definitely about how the widow was the most righteous person in the situation, not the fact that the priests and the Pharisees and the scribes were devouring widows. Read it in context, guys.
I know. Yep. Yep.
Yeah, because we're oh yeah, she's a hero. She gave everything that she had to the church, and she gave more, right? So you should give everything.
That's the point.
Right? The most righteous thing you can do with your money is give it away. No, that's not how that works at all, right? So there's a sort of Gnostic asceticism that's crept in, even into the Reform circles, because it was just the prevalent theology of American evangelicalism.
Yeah, my big bogeyman now is pietism. You know, the German Lutheran movement and that came through, you know, Puritanism to some degree and to Wesley and all that, and the Second Great Awakening, and then, you know, fundamentalism and so dispensationalism. But that, you know, just that idea that, you know, these things are spiritual, those are not.
Right. Yep,
Dichotomy.
A straight dichotomous distinction between the sacred and the secular, and the Bible does not present us with that distinction at all.
I know.
Or like the most holy thing you can do as you get older is you work. I think it's from the book Halftime, actually. You work for your 20 or 30 or 40 years until you can retire, and then finally you can begin the work that matters, running a Bible study at your local church.
Yeah.
Right, so you get your means to an end done, and the end finally you get to do the important stuff. Like, no, what you do that's economically valuable is the important stuff. It is the garden.
It's every bit as spiritual as sharing the 4 spiritual laws.
Right, and while I do agree that like the pastorate is the highest calling you can be called to, having that sacred secular distinction leads a lot of men into the pastorate or toward ministry that should not.
Yeah.
And like, oh, I'm trying to do the best, the highest thing, the thing that would make my life the most meaningful. And you end up with people in those positions of power and influence that ought to have been maybe an investment banker
Right.
or a construction worker, where
Totally.
that's where God would have rightly called them if they had
Right. And
not.
when you're speaking about wealth and postmillennialism specifically,
Mhm.
it really destroys that whole dualistic, Gnostic.
Mhm.
I mean, you can do that with other eschatologies, but it really makes a huge difference because our job as Christians is Christ's body. I don't know if you said this when we were recording or not,
Right.
but about the head but Christ's head, he's king over the church.
We are the
To
hands and feet.
transform is his body's job. That's us, right?
Yeah. Right.
So it
Because
gives
God uses
everything
means as every,
significance.
yeah, God uses means as every Calvinist should affirm,
Exactly.
except for the hyper Calvinists. And so the church is the means through which Christ takes dominion over the earth.
Amen. Love it.
Right? Very direct. And so how that affects financial planning as well. If the church is the means through which we take dominion, then the church needs to take every thought captive, every arena of life captive. And while we've done fairly well in the intellectual space, I think apologetics could use a little bit of work. I'm more Van Tillian, presuppositional, and trying to sanctify and baptize Aristotle into our thinking and make that happen. I think there's a little bit of syncretism going on, but some may call me biblicist for that.
We can have a whole debate
Um,
about that one.
Oh yeah, right. So I want to make sure that we're taking not just thought captive, but action captive. And there is a sphere called economics that ought to be taken captive to Christ as well,
Have you
right?
ever?
The enemy.
So
Um,
I'm a little older than you. You-
Twice as
Nobody
old.
can tell. They think we're the same age.
Oh yeah.
Um, but but 46 and a half years as a Christian,
Mm,
I'm not sure I ever heard a sermon related to economics
mm,
ever. I mean, I've heard about tithing a couple of times,
right.
but
The money
but just
sermon.
economics, kind of
Yeah.
the biblical foundation of it. It's the Lord your God who gives you the ability to produce wealth. So wealth is kind of pretty important. And
Confirm his
have
covenant.
you? I mean, you're younger, but
I mean, I mean, yeah, because giving you the background, I do go to Third Avenue Baptist Church with Albert Mohler and Greg Gilbert. Albert
okay.
Mohler's not an elder there because I think he knows better. He'd have way too much influence. So Greg Gilbert's the teaching pastor, the guy who wrote most of the Nine Marks material that you might have at your church. So he's the teaching pastor, and yeah, he actually does go into this stuff, which is fascinating because I wouldn't
Nice.
have expected someone so ingrained in a group like Nine Marks to be as outspoken about, no, you need to take action.
Mm.
We actually just this last Sunday had a sermon on Nehemiah 3 and 4, the building of the wall. It's
Mm.
like, look, the goldsmiths are building, the perfumer is building, the governors are building.
Mm.
This is not their gifting, naturally.
Right,
Right,
right.
but they're out there bricklaying in the sun with sword and trowel because the work is necessary. So, regardless of your calling or your confirmation of your calling, get out there and get the work done.
Mm.
And like no matter and talking about like all of the wealth that was brought in intentionally and the pushback and like these are men that were taking decisive action, knowing that only God could make it succeed, but not being pietists, doing nothing but praying and hoping that the enemy doesn't come up and attack them.
Well,
Like no, they
I have a silly little saying. It's pray like it depends on, wait,
yeah,
work as if it depends on you, but pray because it depends on God.
yeah, that's the way to do it.
Right? I
So
mean,
we do get sermons that are relatively economic in nature.
mm,
I Not as much as I'd like, naturally, but that's going to be my hobby horse, and I don't expect the rest of the church to be fully on board with that, especially
right.
my church, because I'm a Reconstructionist and they're very much not. But when I hear it preached, it is normally, at least from Greg, very much on point. I'd like him to dig a little deeper. I'd like some very specific errors to be repudiated a little bit more openly. I am seeing that sort of resurgence at the very least in my congregation, where okay, they're taking it serious. They do view economics as I would say a mission field, but it's a place where Christians need to be. It's a place where we need to engage and we need
Yeah,
to do
it's so
right.
frustrating to see most of the wealthy people in the world they're just heathens,
Yeah,
and
right.
it
But the
has an
wealth,
influence.
yeah, the wealth of the wicked is stored up for the righteous. So it's about time we helped with that transaction.
Amen.
Right.
Amen.
Yeah, and to give a little bit of help, money is the economic authority to allocate resources. If you have
Money
money,
is the economic authority
authority to
to
allocate resources.
allocate resources.
That's the clearest definition I can come up with. It's also a medium of exchange and a store of value. But really, if you have money, you get to decide where stuff goes.
Mm.
right? Because you get to own it. I want that thing. Now it's over with me, and I'm deciding where it goes.
There's
Right?
no, there's no, um, our time in history
Mhm.
and the whole 20th century into ours has been influenced by Marxism. And it's not a surprise that one of the four planks of what has to be abolished is private property.
Right.
Has to. You
Yeah.
can't have communism
Yep.
with private property.
Right.
Go figure, right?
Mhm. But yeah, you can't have a commandment that says thou shalt not steal without first predicating private
You
property.
can't even covet it, right? You even
Right.
think it and you're guilty, right?
Yeah.
That's how sacred
So
private property is.
yeah, so it's a big Christian tenet that we have
Amen.
stuff and it belongs to people, individuals,
With
not just
theirs to do as they
collectively.
wish.
Right. Yeah. So if you have money, you have the economic authority to allocate resources. You have to do so wisely, mind you. So there's a reason that money tends to flow to those who are great at allocating capital. Elon Musk did not end up wealthy incidentally. He ended up wealthy because he was fantastic at allocating capital and growing that wealth. Right. So we need a system that is more akin to capitalism, where we have those who have particular skill in allocating resources ending up with more resources to allocate. So if you want more resources, get good at allocating them, right? Learn those marketable skills,
Do
earn
you have
those.
something in scripture where you would turn, it's like a one thing somebody's asking you and you say, they're the type of person who needs a biblical justification, which we
Yeah,
should for everything. But
right.
verse and chapter verse. What would you say to me if I like? Well, money or is not that important or whatever, right? What would you?
Oh man, the Bible actually doesn't come out and say that money is good in any one place, or not directly. It's far more indirect. But like 11 of the 44 parables that Jesus tells are in economic terms. It might be important that money is brought up. The parable of
Mm,
the talent, the widow's mite, the rich man and Lazarus. Right? There are tons of stories where money plays a fairly important role. The devouring of widows, in particular, that Jesus goes on a tirade on for about 3 chapters in
mm.
Matthew. Um, or the fact that there's gold in the land of Havilah, when there's two people on the face of the earth, there's a Garden of Eden, the four rivers, and you go, hey, yeah, down here in Havilah, a land that we don't know where it is exactly, but there's much gold and precious stones,
Mm.
onyx, and a kind of resin. So, like, look, go down there. There's a medium of exchange and a store of value, even
Created
before
very good.
right, even before the fall. So we
Mhm.
have those mediums of exchange mentioned, and then no mention of money or economics, basically at all. We have the iron worker and the maker of musical instruments and some economic activity implied, but no money, no actual transactions happen until we get to Abraham. So there's a fair bit of a gap. And then, well, there are exchanges, but no purely economic ones, I suppose.
What's interesting to me, sorry to interrupt, is that
No worries.
Jewish people,
Mhm.
I believe because of that entire history of them as a people, economically are brilliant.
Indeed.
That's why they're the most successful in any environment in which they exist. The
Mhm.
owner of our company's Jewish. His last name's Hertzberg, and he has I sell technology, so
Mhm.
we're what's called a reseller. So he started this company in '90, and so it's 35 years, and we're a 300 plus million dollar company that's debt free.
There you go.
That's pretty unique.
Yeah.
Everyone I tell that to, they go, "Oh, that's pretty good." But it's just a Jewish person. He's just a brilliant businessman, and I think that goes back
Yeah.
all the way to the Israelites and the Hebrews and so on and so forth.
Because we do want to make a positive argument for everything that we're saying from Scripture. So, is wealth a good thing? And I'd say it's a useful tool. It is a tool of dominion, as Gary North put it. But it can also be a snare, a huge snare. Like
Anything
Proverbs,
good, right? Tim
right?
Keller
Anything
said,
good.
turning a good thing into an ultimate thing is what turns it into an idol.
Right. So quickly gotten gains, those who look for get rich quick schemes, surprise, it falls out of their hands just about as quickly.
Amen.
And effectively, the way I like to put it for our clients is that wealth allows you the freedom to be in public what you are in private. So if you're a bad man and you have more wealth, now
Ooh, say
all
that again.
money gives you the freedom to be in public what you already are in private.
Hmm.
And
Yeah,
there's
when I first became Reformed, I was 24, and I read Charles Hodge's Systematic Theology, and he says, wealth, money, is a reflection of your character. I go, oh, that makes it pretty important.
Right. So if you're a good man, having more money means that your good character can be
Yeah.
deployed, so to speak, in a larger area. But if you're
The
a bad,
assumption of people who have an improper understanding of wealth is that wealth itself can corrupt you.
no,
I don't
no.
buy it. Yeah.
Bad company corrupts good morals.
Yes.
But the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil.
Exactly.
Right? So we're not loving money for money's sake. I took the poem from J.R.R. Tolkien. I love not the arrow or the sword, but I love that which it defends, and I used it for a money post.
Yeah, that's good.
But essentially, I don't love money. I love it as a tool. I love what it allows me to do. I love what we can achieve through it. Because again,
I
it's
love giving to people
right?
and
Yeah.
blessing them.
Right. If you don't have, you cannot pour from an empty cup.
Mm.
But God promises to have our cups runneth over. Right. If we are wise, if we are faithful, if we are faithful over a
And
little,
you're not getting that anywhere, I believe, other than postmillennialism.
yeah, essentially.
You're not gonna, because the idea that God wants you to succeed. I go back to Abraham always, because what did he want to do? Bless. The word blessing or bless is used 60 plus times in Genesis. The whole purpose of his choosing this guy to make a people was to bless not just them,
Right. For
the
world.
nations, the world, all of them.
Right. So, and you can do that without having money yourself, but you're going to be relying on other people who have money to make it happen.
Exactly.
And you go into ministry, someone's got to foot the bill. Someone's got to pay you. Someone's got to pay for the building. Someone's got to pay for the plane tickets and the tracks. Right? It all takes money, and it'd be better if that money was in Christian hands so that you didn't have to grovel at the feet of pagans in order for us to fund Christian endeavors.
Well, look what's happened with a certain portion of the evangelical establishment who is Megan Basham, done great work. Look where this money comes from and has an influence and
all that, right? Because they are buying influence. That's another one of the big things that money can do. It very directly can affect how people take action. So we want to make sure that money is in Christian hands. And I have found it far easier to turn Christians into rich people than to take rich people and turn them into Christians. Something about election and all that. So I want to make sure that the church has the economic resources, education, advice, strategy to actually build that wealth. It's going to take 3 or 4 generations, right, minimum. But for a real life example, because it's already been done before on several occasions, we can actually look to the Mormons. It's the
I know.
Right? Over $100 billion investment portfolio, and it's been like 6 or 7 generations since it came into being, since it existed, right? But they're worker bees. That's why Deseret, the nation state,
and they have lots of children,
lots and lots of children, lots and lots of money, and they are all very, very post-mill, essentially.
Yeah.
Because they believe they're going to get their own planet, so they are more hopeful in a lot of senses than we are.
That's a fascinating psychological perspective, because that our psychology affects kind of everything about us.
Right.
Yeah.
So they're hugely optimistic about the world, and they know how to deploy their capital. In fact, because they just took the Christian playbook and actually applied it. That's it. It's our playbook. We just have to do the same thing they did, except better because we have superior theology. Just apply it rightly, and then it should be no surprise at all when we end up fabulously wealthy, and that we, being the more moral folks, should be able to deploy that more righteously for the common good, for the promotion of human flourishing. Right? But there are several areas that Christians do need to take dominion over properly. We've got the state, we've got education, we've got the family, the household. But we've also got economics. And as far as I'm concerned, that's the arena that God has called me to help the church start to steward a little bit better, a little bit more wisely.
And what's so encouraging to me, again, I was born in '60, so this whole internet thing came way late. It was in about the time you were born. AOL, that's starting to come in, and it's very slow, and in the 2000s, and yet this is the and I say it all the time, it's the Gutenberg press of the 21st century, and it's allowing us, like Habakkuk 2:14 isn't really a stretch, because for the knowledge, for the earth will be filled with the knowledge of the glory of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. And the internet's ubiquitous today. It's everywhere. So your message can just you
Like
know.
the only issue I have is because we do all of our financial planning for free, we do our financial consultations for free. Most people think it's a scam. I'm literally giving away free financial education advice and planning, and we get more people who shy away from it just because I'm not charging them money for it.
Hmm.
I was like, oh no, it's actually free. Just let me
So how
explain
do
how
you
that
make
works
your
to you.
money then?
Brokerage. So we work with 178 different life insurance companies through Brokers Alliance, our broker dealer. And if someone needs life insurance, and the vast majority of Americans are woefully underinsured, so if we pay the monthly fee to defer that risk onto an institutional company like Nationwide or North American, again, we work with a lot of them,
Sure.
then because that's a legitimate use case for dollars, by the way, is mitigating risk. We see that in Proverbs 3 or 4 times. So we want to make sure that we take care of them there. And since most Americans do end up needing life insurance as part of the plan that we build out for them, it's like, yep, and you should get this, this, and this. And then since we broker that deal, the companies that we work with actually pay us. So as far as they're concerned, we just brought them a client they didn't have to go looking for and filled out the application on their behalf.
Absolutely.
So we're plundering the Egyptians, taking the sort of brokerage systems that already exist. We're not charging you, which again is pretty typical, $300 to $500 an hour, or a $5,000 to $7,000 annual retainer for a firm of our size and capability. That's what
Right.
they charge you, and then they turn around and also get a commission from the companies that they work with. We just cut out all of the fat so that we didn't have to charge the client anything. So we get
Hmm.
paid relatively fabulously, at least on a average basis. Not
Hmm.
every client needs life insurance, but those that do, great. We get a not insubstantial paycheck from that. And we didn't have to extract that value from the client in order to get it taken care of. So we help with
Right.
budgeting for free, debt management for free, help you build up your savings for free. The life insurance piece, when it's applicable, pays for everything else. The estate planning, we do charge for that because the software we use is really expensive. But we charge $2,500 for a will, simple revocable trust, durable financial power of attorney, and advanced healthcare directive, and that's a quarter of the price that you're going to pay a lawyer. So we were able to get that relatively cheap. We give a discount for pastors; it's only $1,500 for pastors,
Hmm.
and so we get a little bit of value from there. But that almost nearly just breaks even again on an average basis. And then we also charge for business coaching, just because that's a replacement for my time, about $300 an hour there,
Gotcha.
just to make sure that you're not doing something dumb, or we want to accelerate your ability to create wealth as fast as possible, but we also want to make sure that there is a sort of exchange of value there. Right, so that's essentially how that operates on the business side. But for the average client, they don't pay us anything. Most of them don't need a trust, at
Hmm.
least not yet.
Right.
Most of them don't need business coaching. So they get access to all of our material, all the education, all the advice, all the strategy. Every question they have will help them with their budget. We save $300 to $500 a month on average. Just walking through someone's budget, help them pay down their debts in the most mathematically efficient way possible, not the snowball. That's a very dumb way to pay off your debts.
Hmm.
And just sort of deprogramming the Ramseyisms that a lot of people have implicitly
Yeah,
internalized.
Ramsey doesn't seem to be a real popular guy especially when I got on
Providentially,
Twitter, you know. It's like,
yeah, providentially, he's losing his luster, and people are finally waking up to see the charlatan and the wolf that he is.
hmm.
Because a lot of people mistake him for a kind old man, but no, with the things that he tells people to do, that's aggressive destruction of future Christian wealth.
Hmm.
Very aggressive. So I've got a penchant against him. I don't like punching up. So we'll take him down in time, and we'll
Right.
just do so by being better. But yeah, we want to make sure that we're actually being smart with our money, and so I give away my time for free, with the exception of business planning. And then we're involved in a whole bunch of other companies as well, just trying to make sure that everybody is squared away, everybody's taken care of, that we're doing this as smart as humanly possible, that we're doing it as biblically as humanly possible. And then I think that it's no surprise when God blesses those efforts.
Yeah, yeah, that's great because that's a huge piece of postmillennialism, this idea that God wants to bless our obedience.
Mhm.
That's almost controversial
Right.
in some quarters.
Yeah, he has told us the means and he's in charge of the ends.
Right. And if for some reason, so what I like to tell people is like I've become an author later in life, and so my first book was called The Persuasive Christian Parent, How to Build an Enduring Faith in You and Your Children. And the reason I did it was because this was in the 2015, and the nuns, which if it's not NUN, it's NONES, that
Mhm.
if you list certain religious, persuasions, and you say, which one are you? And none of the above is one. And that has become increasingly popular.
Yeah.
And one young lady was a solid, grew up solid Christian home, goes off to college and becomes an agnostic instantly. And it ticked me off. And I thought that would never happen to my kids, because I've taught them Christianity was the truth, persuaded them almost since they were born. And I'd have people, since I'm telling them I could, for lack of a better term, keep my kids Christian, they would say, well, you can't guarantee that, blah, blah, blah. And I'd say, well, yeah, I can't guarantee anything and I'm in control of nothing. But, and here's the point, is that we live in a cause and effect universe God created. And so we can have a reasonable expectation of certain results based on certain input.
Yeah.
Is it always? Of course not.
Raise them up in the way they should go. And hopefully, if you pray really hard and it is God's will, they will not depart from it.
Yeah, but what people tend to do is tend to think if I just take them to church, read the Bible and pray with them, maybe. So my argument in that book is that we live in an overwhelmingly secular culture. So it's not just enough to tell them what they believe. We have to teach them why they believe it.
Yeah,
and why it's infinitely superior to secularism.
I don't think coloring a picture of Noah's Ark for an hour is going to overcome 40 hours of secular education per week.
Not even close.
Yeah. So we may want to homeschool. We may want a classical Christian education. We may want to.
And regarding what we're talking about is that this idea of postmillennialism, generationalism, and planning for the future and looking at everything and how it's going to affect generations is so people are drawn to that. People love big pictures. We're all story-ish animals, right? And so we want to see something's going somewhere, right? We're not just this little isolated individual, which secularism turns us into, and pietism, tends to do that as well. So, what we're getting towards an hour, and what would you, if you were, what do you want to tell people related to postmillennialism, financial planning, economics?
Oh, plenty. Plenty. I will
get him out the door, if you will.
I will say on your last point, man is a narrative animal. So if he thinks he's living in a tragedy, he's not going to plan for victory. But if
I'm stealing that. I like that one.
So we want to make sure that our people understand that we are living in a story with a happy ending. There's going to be trials. There's going to be difficulties. Every good story has them, right?
But it's a good story.
The climax of history was 2,000 years ago. We're on the resolution side of the plot. And there's going to be some little blurbs here and there. But ultimately, we win. So it's just a matter of taking that victory seriously and doing the actions necessary to see it made manifest.
N.T. Wright calls that inaugurated eschatology.
That's the way.
It's bringing the end right now.
Right now. So it may be another 5,000 years until the Lord does finally return. But in the
that was a hard thing to get my mind around initially.
Right. But we need to live in his victory, not in our defeat. All right. So as far as just general blurbs out the door, if you guys do want any help at all, any of your listeners want help with their finances free of charge, go to www.reformed.money. That's a redirect to our website. We'd be happy to help you out free of charge. Right? That's our mission. It's not a ministry. So tell those door guys to get off my back. I'm not charging you anyway. But it's not a ministry. It is a business. We do make money, but we don't have to charge you for that. So we want to make sure that this is as good of a benefit to you as possible. So we built the company from the ground up to make
that sounds like a great business model.
Right. I figure if we didn't have to run it via Christian dollars, if we could make it work with pagan dollars as the intake, just plundering the Egyptians, right?
Amen.
Right. So if you guys do want help, come sit with one of us. I've got 8 agents right now. I would be happy to sit down with you and walk you through your finances. If you know anyone else who could utilize our services, send them our way, because we spend a lot of money on marketing, and it is hard to overcome the fact that we're free. For whatever reason, that's a huge hurdle for people. Maybe I should start charging so that I can help more people. But no, I would like to keep it free as much as possible. And take economics seriously. It's not just this spurious thing that has to deal with the mundane.
It sounded like you have resources to teach. Is it on your website or?
Right now, we're trialing it through school. It's called Cash Academy, but it's $50 a month. I don't want to charge people for that if I don't have to. So if you do want what's essentially just going to be what we do for our introductory overview, financial consultation, the whole education piece that we give you, but you don't want to talk to one of us, you can go through school and get all of our pre-recorded material there, all of our handouts, all of our sheets. But ideally, I'd like something akin to Financial Peace University to ready to go by June so that I can go church to church and teach what's essentially going to be a Bible study. It's not an economic workshop. It's a Bible study on economics that I'll be happy to teach a church,
Nice.
and then take all of the people who want to be clients as clients, and that'll hopefully pay for the whole thing.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll see how that goes, but that's longer term. I'm also working on a homeschool curriculum so that those at home, hopefully it'll
Do you have children?
I do. I've got 3 kids.
Okay.
Uh,
They're not old enough to do the schooling yet?
no, none of them are in school yet. My oldest is 4.
Okay.
So my youngest is a month and 6 weeks now.
Well, my daughter, I can't speak for us, but my daughter just had her youngest, Caroline, on February 20th. She's 3. She has a 1.5-year-old and a 3-year-old.
All right.
Busy.
Right. Yeah, so I'd like a homeschool curriculum so that I can implicitly teach the parents
Nice.
by view of via the workbook, but really earnestly teach the kids. Like a kid's coloring book where here's some market data. If it's lower than the one on the left, color it red. If it's higher, color it green, and make sure that
There's no
pretty
economic
basic
education.
right at all in most
Zero.
homeschool curriculums.
Christian,
So I wanna make
non-Christian.
sure- Right, here's how you do a budget. Here's how you justify line items. Here's how you do the necessary research to find out if you're overpaying in a given area. Here's how you do basic arbitrage. So if you're being charged a little here and you can make more over here, this is where you should deploy your capital as opposed to toward the debt. Here's how we can leverage debt wisely. Here's the kind of lending schedule that the Bible operates on. Here's how the tithe actually operates because no one's giving 10% tithes a year out of their grain storehouse. Here's how it should apply in today's modern age, and what your pastor probably won't tell you about it. So we'll see how they like it when I teach that in their church. We'll see how it goes, right? But I'd like to build up a lot of material. Gary North wrote prolifically. I think he has something like 300 books, something like that. So
I need to read more Gary North, but yeah.
it's just a matter of a 31 volume commentary on the Bible that's just economics. Like the man wrote a lot. So I would like to take a lot of his material, update it for the modern age because he was working a lot in the 90s and some of those things that he writes about aren't particularly applicable, and just update it and then have some of the deeper truths that he wrote about that were properly timeless and just
Nice.
read essentially. But working on that. So long term, keep an eye out for that. Dominion Wealth Strategists, probably working with the Ezra Institute as a publishing house, but we'll see how it goes.
Good.
And we want to make sure that material is available for everyone at as low a cost as possible. Ideally, basically just having the insurance business fund that so it can be as close to free as we can
Nice.
get it. But that'll be long term. So in the meantime, if you want any of that education before it gets into print, just talk with one of us. We'd be happy to be a resource for you and answer any specific questions you have, as opposed to just giving you a field of wheat. I'd like to give you a loaf of bread.
Super. Well, great. Well, Josiah, thank you so much. It was great to meet you and hear your vision. And it's something that I think, it's time for it. And I think people are ready to hear these kinds of things. And God is prepared providentially so much. It's a thrilling time to be alive. So
That it is.
Yeah,
we
so-
live in interesting times, and that's not a
Amen.
curse.
Amen. No, so thanks again. And we'll talk to you soon.
That you will. You take care.
Seated here at my right hand, the